In a pale green prison chamber, beneath harsh fluorescent lights that hummed like a warning, a man sat perfectly still on a wooden chair. His name was Daniel Hayes, inmate number 44721. Tomorrow morning, at precisely 6 a.m., he would be executed. He wore an orange jumpsuit that hung loose around his frame, but tight against his muscular, tattooed forearms. The ink told stories of loyalty, brotherhood, service, stories of a life that once mattered. His hands were clasped tightly together, elbows resting on his knees, his posture controlled but trembling with the weight of finality. Behind him stood 4 correctional officers in dark blue uniforms, arms folded across their chests, faces carved from stone. They'd seen this scene before. The final hours, the last requests, the breakdown. They were ready for tears, screaming, maybe even violence. But Daniel wasn't breaking down. He sat forward, breathing slowly, staring at the floor like he was waiting for something or someone. When the warden entered the room and asked him a question every condemned man hears, "Do you have a final request?" Daniel didn't ask for a priest. He didn't ask for his favorite meal. He didn't beg for mercy or forgiveness. He asked for his dog. Not just any dog. Titan, his retired police K-9 partner. The only soul in the world who had ever truly trusted him. The only family he had left. The officers exchanged confused glances. The warden hesitated, pen hovering over his clipboard. It was unusual, strange even, but not illegal. "We'll see what we can do," the warden said quietly. And so the call was made. What happened next would shake the entire prison system. What Titan revealed in that cold chamber would rewrite Daniel Hayes' entire story. And when the truth exploded into the open, it wasn't just one man's life that changed forever. It was justice itself. Stay with us, because this story will leave you absolutely speechless. But before we dive in, hit that like button right now. Seriously, it helps more than you know. And if you're new here, smash that subscribe button, because we bring you the most unbelievable true stories you won't find anywhere else. Also, I'm really curious, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country or city name in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. From New York to New Delhi, from London to Lagos. Let me know you're here. All right, let's get into it. The prison woke up differently that morning. There's a certain silence that falls over a facility when an execution is scheduled. It's not peaceful. It's not calm. It's heavy, suffocating, like the air itself knows what's coming. The guards move through the corridors with slow, deliberate steps. Their boots echoed against the concrete in a rhythm that sounded too much like a ticking clock. Even the most seasoned officers, men who'd spent decades behind these walls, couldn't shake the tension that clung to execution days. At the far end of D Block, in a solitary holding cell, sat Daniel Hayes. Once, his name had been spoken with respect. He'd been Officer Hayes, decorated K-9 handler, fearless on the streets, trusted by his brothers in blue. His partner, a German shepherd named Titan, had been legendary. Together, they'd taken down armed suspects, tracked missing children, saved lives. But that was another lifetime. Now, Daniel was just another number. Another man in an orange jumpsuit waiting for the state to end his story. Except Daniel wasn't like the others. He wasn't pacing his cell. He wasn't shouting at the guards or pounding on the bars. He wasn't writing last-minute letters or clinging to a Bible. He sat perfectly still on the edge of his narrow cot, hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed on the far wall. His breathing was steady, controlled, almost too controlled. The 2 guards stationed outside his cell door watched him closely. Never seen someone this calm before. Officer Martinez whispered, arms crossed over his chest. Yeah, his partner, Officer Green, replied quietly. It's unnerving, like he knows something we don't. Martinez nodded slowly. Makes you wonder what's going through his head. Daniel heard every word, but he didn't respond. His mind was somewhere else entirely. He was back on the streets. Back in the patrol car with Titan in the seat beside him, ears perked, eyes sharp, ready for anything. He remembered the way Titan would press his nose against the window when they passed the park. The way he'd bark with excitement before a call. The The way he'd rest his heavy head on Daniel's lap during the quiet nights. Titan had been more than a partner. He'd been family, the only one who never judged, never doubted, never turned away. And now, after 5 years of separation, 5 years of silence and concrete walls, Daniel would see him one last time. A sharp metallic buzz echoed down the corridor. The main steel door unlocked with a heavy clank. Every guard in the block straightened. Warden Phillips stepped through, clipboard in hand, his face as unreadable as always. Behind him walked the prison chaplain, a thin man with kind eyes, and Dr. Melissa Tran, the facility psychologist who'd been assigned to Daniel's case. But Daniel's eyes weren't on them. They were on the door, waiting, because somewhere beyond those walls, Titan was coming. And when that dog walked into the room, everything was about to change. Before Daniel Hayes became inmate 44721, before the orange jumpsuit and the iron bars, before the world labeled him a killer, he was something else entirely. He was a legend. In the K-9 unit of the Metro Police Department, Daniel Hayes wasn't just respected. He was revered. Other officers would watch him work and shake their heads in disbelief. That man doesn't just train dogs, his captain once said. He speaks their language. And at the center of that legend was Titan, a German shepherd with a coat like polished bronze and black, ears that stood sharp as daggers, and eyes, God, those eyes, intelligent, focused, unshakable. Titan wasn't just a police dog. He was a warrior, a protector, a brother. For 7 years, Daniel and Titan were inseparable. They didn't just work together. They moved as one. When Daniel gave a command, Titan didn't hesitate. When Titan sensed danger, Daniel trusted him without question. That kind of bond doesn't come from training manuals or kennels. It comes from something deeper, something unbreakable. Together, they tracked fugitives through abandoned buildings where no human could see in the dark. Titan's nose could pick up a scent trail 3 days old, through rain, through traffic, through chaos. Together, they uncovered hidden weapons stashed in walls, under floors, in sidecars that looked clean to everyone else. Titan never missed. Not once. Together, they saved lives during high-risk raids, pulling children from burning meth labs, detecting tripwires before SWAT teams walked into them, alerting Daniel to armed suspects hiding in shadows. Titan was trained in scent memory, tactical response, and trauma detection. He could identify gunpowder residue, trace amounts of explosives, even cortisol levels in a suspect's sweat. He could tell when someone was lying just by the way their body reacted. But more than that, Titan loved Daniel, and Daniel loved him back. Off duty, Titan wasn't a weapon. He was a companion. Daniel would take him to the lake on weekends, throw sticks into the water, watch him dive in with pure joy. He'd cook Titan's steak on his birthday. He'd let him sleep at the foot of his bed every single night, one paw stretched toward Daniel like an anchor. "You're the only one who gets me, boy," Daniel would whisper, scratching behind Titan's ears. "The only one who doesn't ask questions." And Titan would look up at him with those deep, knowing eyes, like he understood every word. But then came the night that shattered everything. 6 years ago, a cold October evening, the kind where fog rolled through the streets and made everything feel wrong. The call came at around 11 p.m. Armed suspects barricaded in an old warehouse on the east side. Possible hostages. Shots fired. All units respond. Daniel and Titan were first on the scene. The warehouse loomed like a skeleton. Rusted metal, shattered windows, shadows that seemed to breathe. Daniel's instincts screamed at him to wait for backup. But dispatch said there were civilians inside. Children, maybe. So he went in. Titan led the way, nose low, ears twitching. Daniel followed close, flashlight cutting through the darkness, hand steady on his weapon. And then chaos. Gunfire exploded from every direction. Muzzle flashes lit up the space like lightning. Daniel hit the ground, rolled behind a concrete pillar, returned fire. Titan barked furiously, circling, trying to locate the shooters. "Titan, hold," Daniel shouted. But the noise, the gunfire, the shouting, the ringing in his ears, it was too much. Then he heard it. A scream. Officer Miguel Ramirez. Daniel's colleague. His friend. "Miguel," Daniel yelled, scrambling toward the sound. He found him on the ground, clutching his chest, blood pooling beneath him. Daniel dropped to his knees, pressed his hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Stay with me, Miguel. Stay with me." But Miguel's eyes went blank, and then the lights came on. Backup flooded the warehouse. Flashlights, sirens, voices shouting commands. Daniel looked up, disoriented, covered in blood. His weapon was on the floor beside him. Ballistics would later match it to one of the bullets found at the scene. And just like that, the legend ended. The trial was brutal. Prosecutors painted Daniel as unstable, angry, a man with a temper who'd snapped under pressure. They said he'd gone rogue, fired wildly, and killed his own partner in the chaos. Daniel sat in that courtroom every single day, calm and composed, insisting he'd been framed, that someone else had fired those shots, that he was set up. "I didn't kill Miguel," he said quietly, looking the jury in the eyes. "He was my brother." But the evidence was damning. The weapon, the blood, the lack of other suspects. His lawyer argued self-defense. Confusion. The fog of war. It didn't matter. The jury came back in 4 hours. Guilty. First-degree murder of a police officer. Sentence, death. Daniel didn't cry. Didn't shout. He just closed his eyes and exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for years. Titan was retired 2 weeks after the verdict. Department policy. AK, 9-handler convicted of murder couldn't keep his dog. Titan was reassigned to a training facility, then moved to a foster program for retired service animals. Daniel tried to write letters, tried to stay connected, but the system didn't allow it. Convicted felons don't get visitation rights with dogs. So for 5 years, Daniel sat in his cell, replaying that night over and over in his mind. And Titan, wherever he was, waited. Dogs don't forget. They don't stop loving. They just wait. If this story is hitting you right in the heart, do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We've got more incredible, true stories coming your way. Also, drop a comment below. Tell me, do you think Daniel is innocent? Or is there more to this story? I want to hear what you think. Now let's see what happens when Titan walks through that prison door. The sound came first. A deep, metallic groan that echoed through the chamber like the opening of a tomb. Every head turned toward the steel door at the far end of the room. The guards standing behind Daniel shifted their weight. The warden straightened his clipboard. Even the chaplain, who'd seen dozens of these final meetings, leaned forward slightly. Daniel didn't move. He sat perfectly still on that wooden chair, hands still clasped between his knees, but his breathing changed. Slower, deeper, like he was trying to hold himself together. The door swung open, and then Titan. He entered on a short leather leash, held by a young animal control officer who clearly had no idea what she'd just walked into. Her face was nervous, uncertain. She'd been told to bring a retired police dog to the prison for a final visit. Nothing more, nothing less. But Titan knew exactly where he was. He was older now. 6 years had passed since that night in the warehouse. His muzzle had traces of gray, and his movements were slower, more deliberate. But he was still imposing, still powerful. His chest was thick and broad, his stance strong and grounded. His coat still gleamed under the fluorescent lights, bronze and black, the colors of a warrior. And his eyes, those eyes hadn't changed at all. Sharp, intelligent, scanning the room like he was back on duty. The officer holding his leash hesitated at the threshold. "Where do you want him?" she asked quietly. The warden gestured toward Daniel. "Let him go to his handler." She nodded and stepped forward, leading Titan across the pale green tiles. His claws clicked against the floor in a rhythmic pattern. Click, 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 each step echoing in the silence. Daniel's eyes softened. For the first time since entering that chamber, his face showed something other than calm. His lips parted slightly. His jaw tightened. A single tear traced down his cheek, but he didn't wipe it away. "Titan," he whispered. It was barely audible, but Titan heard it. His ears twitched forward. The guards expected what everyone expects when a man sees his dog after years of separation. Joy, relief, a tail wagging so hard it shakes the whole body. A dog lunging forward, jumping, licking, whining with pure, unfiltered happiness. A reunion. But that's not what happened. Titan stopped. Just 3 feet from Daniel, the animal control officer loosened the leash, expecting him to rush forward. But Titan froze. His entire body went rigid. His ears, which had been perked forward, slowly pulled back flat against his skull. And then, a sound. A low, rumbling growl. It started deep in his chest and rolled out like distant thunder. It wasn't loud, but filled the room. The guards tensed immediately. Hands moved instinctively toward their belts. The warden took a step back. "What's going on?" one of the officers muttered. Daniel's face went pale. "Titan," he said again, softer this time. Confused. "Boy, it's me." But Titan didn't wag his tail. He didn't relax. Instead, he began to move. Slowly, deliberately. He started circling Daniel. Not playfully, not curiously, like he was on a mission. His nose was low, sniffing the air in sharp, controlled bursts. His body remained tense, coiled, ready. His eyes never left Daniel. But they weren't the eyes of a companion. They were the eyes of a working dog. A dog who'd found something. "Sir," one of the guards said, stepping forward. That's not how a dog greets his handler. The warden raised a hand, silencing him. "Wait." Daniel sat perfectly still, barely breathing. His hands were trembling now, still clasped between his knees. "Titan, what are you doing?" he whispered. "It's okay. It's me. I'm right here." But Titan wasn't listening. He completed one full circle around the chair, sniffing intensely. Then he stopped, directly beside Daniel's right shoulder. His growl deepened. And then he lunged. Everyone in the room flinched. The guards reached for their weapons. The chaplain stepped back. The animal control officer yanked the leash, but Titan was strong, too strong. "Stand down," the warden shouted. But Titan wasn't attacking. He planted his front paws firmly on the floor and shoved his nose hard against Daniel's right shoulder. Not biting, not scratching, alerting. His entire body went stiff. His tail pointed straight back. His nose pressed insistently against the same spot on Daniel's shoulder, again and again, with laser focus. It was a stance every canine officer in the world would recognize instantly. The alert. The signal a trained detection dog gives when they've found what they're looking for. Drugs, explosives, weapons, evidence. Daniel's eyes went wide. "What?" he breathed. "What are you doing, boy?" Titan barked. Once. Sharp. Commanding. Then he sat, right beside Daniel's shoulder, staring up at the officers with unwavering focus. The universal signal. "I found it. Right here. Look." The warden's face shifted from confusion to shock. He stepped closer, staring at the spot Titan was fixated on. "What is he alerting to?" he demanded. One of the guards, a former K-9 unit officer named Torres, moved forward slowly. He knew that stance. He'd seen it 100 times. "Sir," Torres said carefully, "that's a detection alert. He's signaling evidence." "Evidence of what?" the warden snapped. Torres crouched down beside Titan, examining Daniel's shoulder closely. The orange fabric of the jumpsuit looked completely normal. No tears, no stains, nothing visible. But Titan didn't make mistakes. "Permission to check the shoulder, sir?" Torres asked. The warden nodded. Torres gently pressed his fingers against the fabric where Titan's nose had been. He felt along the seam, then paused. His expression changed. "There's something here," he said quietly. "What do you mean, something?" the warden asked. Torres didn't answer immediately. He pressed harder, feeling the shape beneath the fabric. Then he looked up at Daniel, eyes narrowed. "Sir, I need to cut this open." Daniel said nothing. He just stared at Titan, his face a mixture of shock, confusion, and something else. "Hope." The warden hesitated for only a moment, then nodded. "Do it." Torres pulled a small blade from his belt and carefully sliced through the stitching along the shoulder seam of Daniel's jumpsuit. The fabric peeled back, and there, embedded in the lining, invisible from the outside, was a small, thin object. Torres pulled it free. It was a microchip, no bigger than a grain of rice. The room went silent. "What the hell is that?" one of the guards whispered. Torres held it up to the light, turning it slowly. "It's a data chip," he said. "The kind used for encrypted storage." The warden's face went white. How long has that been in there? Daniel shook his head, voice barely a whisper. I don't know. I've never seen it before. Titan barked again, this time louder, like he was saying, listen, look, believe him. Okay, stop right there. If your jaw just dropped, smash that like button right now. This is getting wild, and you need to subscribe because you do not want to miss what happens next. Comment below. Did you see that coming? Do you think Daniel knew about the chip? Or is he set up? Drop your theories. I'm reading every single one. Now, let's find out what's on that chip. The microchip sat in Officer Torres's palm like a tiny bomb. Everyone in the room stared at it. This impossibly small piece of metal and silicon that had been hidden inside Daniel Hayes' prison uniform for God knows how long. But Daniel wasn't looking at the chip. He was looking at Titan. The dog stood perfectly still, eyes locked on Daniel's shoulder, body still tense, tail rigid. He hadn't relaxed, hadn't backed down, and then Daniel's face changed. His eyes widened. His breathing quickened. Something was clicking into place, something buried deep in his memory, something he'd forgotten or been forced to forget. Wait, Daniel said suddenly, his voice louder now, urgent. Check my shoulder. The warden frowned. We just did. That's where we found the... No, Daniel interrupted, shaking his head. Not the uniform. My shoulder. My skin. The room went quiet. Titan barked. Sharp. Insistent. He lifted one paw and scratched at Daniel's upper arm, right near the collarbone, just beneath where the chip had been hidden in the fabric. The warden's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about, Hayes? Daniel leaned forward, his voice shaking now, not with fear but with something else. Desperation. Realization. There's a scar, he said. Right here. He gestured with his cuffed hands toward his right shoulder, just below the collarbone. Please, just look. The warden exchanged a glance with Officer Torres. Execution was less than 12 hours away. The state had already prepared the chamber. The witnesses had been notified. The final meal had been ordered. Everything was in motion. This was supposed to be a simple goodbye, a humane gesture. Let the man see his dog one last time before the end. But now nothing about this felt simple. Sir, Torres said quietly. If there's something there, something that wasn't documented. The warden's jaw tightened. He looked at Daniel for a long moment, then nodded. Get the medic. 2 minutes later, a prison medic entered the chamber. A middle-aged woman named Dr. Patel, who'd worked in corrections for over a decade. She'd seen it all. Stab wounds, overdoses, self-inflicted injuries. Nothing surprised her anymore. But when the warden explained what they needed, even she looked skeptical. You want me to examine his shoulder, she said flatly. Yes. For a scar. Yes. She sighed, snapping on a pair of latex gloves. All right, let's get this over with. She walked over to Daniel, who was still sitting on the wooden chair, hands cuffed in front of him. Titan remained at his side, watching her closely, but no longer growling. I need you to lean forward, Dr. Patel said, and stay still. Daniel nodded and tilted his body to the left, giving her access to his right shoulder. She carefully pulled down the collar of his orange jumpsuit, exposing the skin beneath. And then she stopped. Her expression shifted. What? The warden asked. What is it? Dr. Patel didn't answer immediately. She leaned closer, her gloved fingers tracing something on Daniel's skin, just below his collarbone. There's a scar here, she said slowly. The room seemed to hold its breath. What kind of scar? Torres asked. Dr. Patel straightened, her face serious now. Small. Circular. Approximately 1 centimeter in diameter. Looks old. Maybe 5 or 6 years. She paused. Consistent with a puncture wound. The warden stepped closer. A puncture wound? Yes, she said. Something sharp. A blade, maybe, or a needle. Daniel's breathing changed. It came faster now, shallow and uneven. His hands began to shake. His eyes unfocused, staring at the floor but seeing something else entirely. Somewhere else. 6 years ago. Flashback. The warehouse. Darkness. Shadows. The smell of rust and gunpowder. Daniel moving through the space, Titan beside him, both of them silent, controlled, ready. And then pain. Sudden. Explosive. White hot. Something sharp plunged into his shoulder from behind, just below the collarbone. He gasped, stumbled forward, tried to turn, but his vision blurred. His legs buckled. He hit the ground hard, and then the gunfire started. Chaos. Shouting. Muzzle flashes. Miguel screaming. Daniel crawling toward him, hands slipping in blood, everything spinning. "I was stabbed," Daniel whispered. The medic blinked. "What?" Daniel looked up at her, his eyes wide, chest heaving. "I was stabbed. Before the shooting. Someone came up behind me and stabbed me in the shoulder." The warden's face went pale. "That's not in the trial record." "I know," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "I told them. I told the investigators. I said someone attacked me before I even fired my weapon. But they didn't believe me. They said I was making it up, that I was trying to cover for what I did." Officer Torres stepped forward. "If you were stabbed before the shooting, then the prosecution's timeline is wrong," Daniel finished. "They said I fired first, that I was the aggressor. But if someone attacked me before the shots were fired..." The warden's jaw clenched. "Then you were defending yourself." Dr. Patel pulled out a small flashlight and examined the scar more closely, taking photos with a camera one of the guards handed her. "This is consistent with a deliberate puncture," she said. "The angle suggests it came from above and behind. If this happened during a struggle..." "It wasn't a struggle," Daniel said quietly. "It was an ambush." Titan, who had been silent for the past few minutes, suddenly relaxed. His ears came forward. His tail lowered. The tension drained from his body. And then he sat, right beside Daniel. He pressed his head against Daniel's knee and exhaled deeply, like he'd been holding his breath for 6 years. Daniel's hand, still cuffed, reached down and touched the top of Titan's head. The dog leaned into the touch. "Good boy," Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. "Good boy." But Titan wasn't done. He lifted his head, turned, and stared directly at one of the 4 officers standing in the line behind Daniel. His ears pulled back again. A low growl rumbled from his chest. Officer Torres noticed immediately. "Sir," he said quietly. The dog's alerting again. The warden turned. "What?" Titan stood up, body tense once more, eyes locked on the second officer from the left, a man in his early 50s with graying hair and a weathered face. His name was Officer Raymond Schultz, and he was sweating. "Schultz," the warden said slowly. "Step forward." Schultz didn't move. "I said step forward." Schultz's jaw tightened. His hand moved slightly toward his belt. Titan barked. Loud. Aggressive. He took 2 steps toward Schultz, hackles raised. "Control that dog." Schultz snapped, but the animal control officer didn't pull him back. She was staring at Schultz now too, her instincts kicking in. "Sir," Torres said quietly to the warden. "Titan knows him." Daniel's head snapped up. He looked at Schultz, really looked at him for the first time. And then his face went white. "You," Daniel whispered. "You were there." Schultz's expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You were at the warehouse," Daniel said, his voice rising. "You were one of the backup units. You came in after the shooting." "So what?" Schultz said coldly. "Half the department was there." "No," Daniel said, shaking his head, pieces falling into place. "You came in before backup arrived. You were already inside." The room went dead silent. Titan barked again. This time he didn't stop. "Wait. Hold on. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is about to blow wide open. And drop a comment. Do you think Schultz set Daniel up? Is he the one who stabbed him? Let me know your theory. Like this video if you're as hooked as I am. Let's get to the truth. Titan stopped barking, but he didn't relax. His entire body shifted, from confusion, from emotion, from the chaos of reunion, into something else entirely. Precision. His ears locked forward. His stance widened. His breathing slowed into controlled, deliberate inhales. This wasn't a pet anymore. This was a police dog, and he was working. Every person in that chamber felt the change. The air seemed to tighten. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder. Even the chaplain, who had been standing quietly in the corner, took a step back. Titan's eyes moved across the room with surgical focus, scanning each face, each body, each movement. And then he stopped. His gaze locked onto one of the 4 officers standing in the line behind Daniel's chair. Third from the left. Officer Grant Holloway. Holloway was in his late 40s, clean-shaven, with sharp features and cold gray eyes. He'd been with the department for over 20 years. Decorated, respected, trusted. He stood perfectly still, arms folded across his chest, face unreadable. But his jaw tightened. Titan's growl returned, low, guttural, unmistakable. He took one step forward, then another. His eyes never left Holloway's face. "Control that dog," Holloway said sharply, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The animal control officer tightened her grip on the leash, but Titan pulled hard, straining against it, his focus unbreakable. "Titan, heel," she commanded. But Titan didn't heel. He barked. Once, twice, 3 times. Each bark was direct, deliberate, and aimed squarely at Officer Grant Holloway. Daniel's eyes widened. His breath caught in his throat. "He remembers," Daniel whispered. The warden turned. "What?" Daniel's voice grew stronger, more certain. "He remembers the scent." Officer Torres, the former K-9 handler, stepped closer. "What are you talking about?" Daniel looked at him, then at Titan, then back at Holloway. K-9 units catalog scent during traumatic events. It's part of their training. When something violent happens, gunfire, blood, adrenaline, the dog's brain locks onto every scent in that environment. It's survival instinct. Titan was there that night. He was inside that warehouse. Torres's eyes widened. "So if Holloway was there, then Titan knows his scent," Daniel finished. "And he's identifying him right now." The warden's expression darkened. He turned slowly toward Holloway. "Officer Holloway," he said carefully, "why is the dog alerting to you?" Holloway's face remained calm. "Too calm. I have no idea, sir. Dogs can be unpredictable, especially after years of separation." "Unpredictable," Torres said, shaking his head. "No, not detection dogs. Not Titan. He doesn't make mistakes." Holloway's jaw clenched. "Are you seriously going to take the word of a dog over a decorated officer?" "I'm taking the word of evidence," the warden said coldly. "And right now, that dog is treating you like a suspect." Titan stepped forward again, pulling so hard the handler stumbled. "Titan, no," she shouted. But Titan wasn't listening. He planted his front paws, lowered his head, and barked with a force that echoed off the walls. And then he lunged. Everything happened in a fraction of a second. Holloway took a subtle step backward, his hand moving instinctively toward his waistband. Titan saw it. In one explosive movement, the dog surged forward, tearing the leash from the handler's grip. He closed the distance in 2 strides and clamped his jaws around the cuff of Holloway's pant leg. "Get him off me," Holloway shouted, jerking backward. But Titan didn't let go. He pulled hard, yanking Holloway off balance. And as Holloway stumbled, something fell. It hit the floor with a sharp metallic clink. Everyone froze. Officer Torres moved first. He dropped to one knee and picked up the object, a folding blade. Small, compact, razor sharp, the kind of knife a cop might carry for utility purposes, or for something else entirely. The chamber erupted. "Drop it," one of the guards shouted, his hand flying to his sidearm. "Hands up." Now another yelled. Holloway raised his hand slowly, his face twisting into something dark and dangerous. "This is insane. That's a standard-issue utility knife. Half the officers in this room carry one." "Then why did you reach for it the moment the dog focused on you?" the warden demanded. Holloway said nothing. Torres turned the blade over in his hand, examining it carefully. His face went pale. "Sir," he said quietly, "there's an inscription on the handle." The warden stepped closer. "What does it say?" Torres held it up to the light. Engraved in tiny letters along the base of the blade were 3 words. "MR, brother forever." Daniel's breath stopped. "MR," he whispered. "Miguel Ramirez." The warden's eyes snapped to Holloway. This was Miguel Ramirez's knife. Holloway's expression didn't change. "So what? He gave it to me years ago. We were partners." "Miguel never gave away that knife," Daniel said, his voice shaking. "It was a gift from his father. He carried it every single day. He told me he'd never part with it. Then how do you explain me having it?" Holloway shot back. Daniel stood up slowly, his cuffed hands trembling. You took it off his body. The room went silent. Even Titan stopped growling. The warden's face turned to stone. Officer Holloway, I'm going to ask you one time. Were you at that warehouse the night Miguel Ramirez was killed? Holloway's jaw worked. His eyes darted toward the door. Answer the question, the warden said coldly. Holloway exhaled sharply. I was part of the backup unit. I arrived after the shooting. That's a lie, Daniel said. You were already inside. You stabbed me. You killed Miguel. And you framed me for it. That's absurd. Then explain the knife. Daniel shouted. Explain why Titan is alerting to you. Explain the scar on my shoulder that wasn't documented in the trial. Holloway's face flushed red. You're a convicted murderer. You'll say anything to save your own skin. Then let's test it, Officer Torres said quietly. Everyone turned to him. He held up the microchip they'd found in Daniel's uniform. This chip was hidden in his jumpsuit. Someone planted it there. Someone who had access to evidence. Someone who knew Daniel would be executed before anyone thought to look. He stepped toward Holloway. Someone like you. Holloway's hand twitched. Titan saw it. The dog surged forward again, snarling, teeth bared. Restrain him, the warden ordered. Two guards grabbed Holloway by the arms, slamming him against the wall. He didn't resist, but his eyes burned with rage. You have no proof, Holloway hissed. No proof of anything. Officer Torres held up the microchip. Then you won't mind if we analyze this. See what's on it. Holloway went silent. Daniel's voice cut through the tension, quiet but certain. It's the body cam footage, isn't it? Holloway's eyes widened, just for a second. But it was enough. You were wearing a camera that night, Daniel continued. You recorded everything. The setup, the stabbing, Miguel's murder. And you hid the footage because it proves I'm innocent. Holloway's face twisted into something between fury and panic. Get him out of here, the warden said. Now! As the guards dragged Holloway toward the door, he turned back one last time, staring at Daniel with pure venom. You should have stayed quiet, Holloway spat. You should have just died. Daniel met his gaze without flinching. But I didn't. The door slammed shut. And for the first time in 6 years, Daniel Hayes allowed himself to breathe. Titan walked over slowly, sat at Daniel's feet, and rested his head on Daniel's knee. Good boy, Daniel whispered, tears streaming down his face. Good boy. Stop everything. If this just gave you chills, hit that like button now. And if you're not subscribed, seriously, subscribe. You just witnessed one of the most insane twists ever. Comment below. Did you see that coming? Do you think there's more to this story? Drop your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Now let's find out what's on that chip. The guard slammed Holloway against the wall, arms pinned behind his back, cuffs clicking into place around his wrists. But Titan didn't stop. He stood in the center of the room, chest heaving, teeth still bared, barking with a ferocity that made the walls feel smaller. His eyes tracked Holloway's every movement, every breath, like he was daring him to run. Titan, stand down, the animal control officer called, but her voice was shaking now. Because everyone in that room knew, Titan wasn't wrong. He'd never been wrong. The warden stood in the middle of the chaos, clipboard forgotten, face pale and rigid. He looked at Holloway, then at Daniel, then at the microchip still resting in Officer Torres's hand. Get forensics on the line, the warden said quietly. I want that chip analyzed. Now, sir, one of the guards said, with all due respect, we're less than 10 hours from. I know what time it is, the warden snapped. His voice echoed through the chamber. Get forensics. Now. The guard nodded and pulled out his radio, stepping toward the corner of the room. Holloway, still pinned against the wall, let out a bitter laugh. You're wasting your time, he said. You think one chip changes anything? You think you can stop this? The warden walked up to him slowly, stopping just inches from his face. I think, he said coldly, that you're scared. And scared men talk. Holloway's smirk faltered. Take him to holding, the warden ordered. And don't let him near a phone. But as the guards began to drag Holloway toward the door, something shifted in him. Maybe it was the weight of 6 years of lies. Maybe it was the sight of Titan, Miguel's dog, Daniel's dog, staring at him with those unblinking, all-knowing eyes. Maybe it was the realization that the walls were finally closing in. Whatever it was, Holloway broke. "Wait," he said hoarsely. The guard stopped. The warden turned. "What?" Holloway's head dropped forward, his breathing ragged. For a long moment, he said nothing. And then, he laughed. Not a joyful laugh. A hollow, broken sound. "You want the truth?" Holloway said, his voice cracking. "Fine, I'll give you the truth." Daniel's entire body tensed. He gripped the edge of the wooden chair so hard his knuckles turned white. "Holloway, shut your mouth," one of the other officers muttered nervously. But Holloway ignored him. 6 years ago, Holloway began, his voice low and steady now, a small group of us, just 5 officers, started running a side operation. The warden's face went cold. "What kind of operation?" Holloway looked up, eyes red and glassy. "Confiscated weapons. Drugs. Evidence that was supposed to be destroyed. We sold it. Quietly. Off the books. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. Nobody got hurt. Nobody even knew." Daniel shook his head in disbelief. Miguel knew. Holloway's jaw clenched. "Yeah, Miguel knew. He found the ledger," Holloway continued, "hidden in Lieutenant Marsh's locker. Miguel was sharp, too sharp. He started asking questions, poking around. He told me he was going to take it to internal affairs." "So you killed him," Daniel said quietly. Holloway's eyes snapped to Daniel, filled with rage and regret. "I didn't want to. You think I wanted to kill my partner? My friend. Then why did you?" Daniel shouted. "Because he wouldn't stop." Holloway yelled back, his voice cracking. He said he was going to expose all of us, destroy our careers, our families, everything we built. I tried to reason with him. I tried to make him see. "So you set up a fake raid," the warden said, his voice like ice. Holloway nodded slowly. "Marsh orchestrated it. Anonymous tip. Armed suspects in a warehouse. We knew Miguel would respond. And he did." Daniel's hands were shaking now. "And me?" Holloway exhaled sharply. "You weren't supposed to be there." The words hung in the air like smoke. "You walked in unexpectedly," Holloway continued, his voice quieter now. "We didn't know you were coming. You and Titan just showed up. I panicked." Daniel's breath caught. "You stabbed me." From behind, Holloway admitted. "I thought if I took you out fast, you'd go down. You'd be unconscious. Maybe even bleed out before backup arrived." Officer Torres stepped forward, face twisted in disgust. "But he didn't." "No," Holloway said bitterly. "He didn't. He stayed conscious just long enough to see Miguel." Daniel closed his eyes, the memory flooding back. The pain in his shoulder. The metallic taste of blood in his mouth. Crawling across the floor, vision swimming, hands slipping. Miguel on the ground, clutching his chest. "Stay with me, Miguel. Stay with me." And then, Holloway's face, blurred and distant, standing over them both. A single gunshot. Miguel's body going limp. Darkness. "I shot him," Holloway said flatly. "Miguel confronted me. He saw what I did to Daniel. He tried to stop me. We struggled. And I shot him." The room was silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. And then, the warden asked. Holloway's voice was almost a whisper now. Daniel was unconscious, bleeding, surrounded by evidence. It was perfect. Marsh and I planted Daniel's weapon near the scene. We wiped mine. We called it in as officer down, shots fired. Backup arrived. Chaos. Nobody questioned it. Except Titan, Daniel said quietly. Holloway's eyes flicked to the dog. Yeah, except Titan. He barked that night, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. I remember it now. He was barking at you, trying to warn me. But the gunfire, the shouting, it drowned him out. Titan walked over to Daniel and sat beside him, pressing his body against Daniel's leg. Holloway stared at the dog with something that looked almost like regret. That damn dog never forgot. I knew the moment he walked in here today. I saw it in his eyes. You should have confessed 6 years ago, Torres said coldly. Holloway let out a bitter laugh. Confess? To what? We had the perfect scapegoat. Daniel survived just long enough to be blamed. And then Marsh made sure the trial went our way. Suppressed the body cam footage. Buried the scar. Coached witnesses. Lieutenant Marsh. The warden repeated, his voice sharp. He was in on this. He organized it, Holloway said. And he made sure Daniel didn't survive the appeals process. That's why the execution was pushed through so fast. Daniel's voice was barely audible. You were going to let me die. Holloway met his eyes. You weren't supposed to survive the warehouse. The words hit like a hammer. The warden's face flushed red. He turned sharply and grabbed the radio from the guard's hand. This is Warden Phillips, he said, voice steady but urgent. I am issuing an immediate order. Stop the execution of Daniel Hayes. Effective now. Do you copy? Static crackled. Then a voice. Copy that, sir. Execution halted. Daniel's head dropped into his hands. His shoulders shook. And for the first time in 6 years, he wept. Not for despair. From relief. Titan placed his head in Daniel's lap. The dog's tail wagged slowly, gently, like he understood. Like he'd been waiting for this moment all along. Daniel ran his fingers through Titan's fur, his voice breaking. You saved me, boy. You saved me. Titan's tail wagged faster. The warden crouched down beside them, his voice soft. Mr. Hayes, I don't know what to say. Daniel looked up, tears streaming down his face. Just find Marsh. Find the others. Don't let them get away. The warden nodded. You have my word. He stood and turned to the guards holding Holloway. Get him out of my sight. As they dragged Holloway toward the door, he looked back one last time at Daniel. I'm sorry, Holloway whispered. But Daniel didn't respond. Because some apologies mean nothing. If you're not crying right now, check your pulse. Seriously, hit that like button if this story just wrecked you in the best way. And subscribe because we're not done yet. There's still more to this story, and you need to see how it ends. Drop a comment. Do you think Holloway deserved forgiveness? Should Daniel get justice? Let me know. Now let's see what happens next. Silence filled the chamber. But it was different now. Not the cold, procedural silence of a prison preparing for an execution. Not the heavy, suffocating quiet of countdown and finality. This silence was human. It carried weight. The weight of truth unearthed, of justice delayed but not denied, of a man who'd been buried alive by lies and was now, finally, breathing again. Daniel Hayes sat on that wooden chair, the same chair he'd been sitting in when this all began. His hands, tattooed, scar-cuffed, hung between his knees. His shoulders shook. His head was bowed, and tears fell. Silent, steady, unstoppable. 6 years of grief. 6 years of rage. 6 years of isolation and despair. All of it pouring out in a moment he never thought he'd live to see. He wasn't dead. He was free. Titan stood a few feet away, watching. His ears were forward now. His body relaxed. The tension that had gripped him since the moment he entered the room, the alertness, the aggression, the duty, was gone. He wasn't a police dog anymore. He was just a dog who'd found his person. Slowly, carefully, Titan stepped forward. His claws clicked softly against the pale green tiles. Click, click, click. Each step deliberate, gentle, like he was approaching something fragile. He stopped just in front of Daniel. And this time, there was no growl, no bark, no alert, just love. Titan lowered his head and rested it on Daniel's knee. The weight of it, warm, solid, real, broke something inside Daniel. He let out a choked sob and pressed his cuffed hands into Titan's thick fur, burying his face against the dog's neck. I missed you, Daniel whispered, his voice muffled and broken. God, I missed you so much. Titan didn't move. He stood perfectly still, letting Daniel hold him, letting him cry, letting him finally feel something other than hopelessness. The dog's tail wagged slowly. Once, twice, like he was saying, I know. I missed you too. Around them, the guards stood frozen. These were men who'd seen everything. Violence, death, rage, despair. They were trained to stay detached, to keep their faces neutral, to never let emotion show. But this was different. Officer Martinez, standing near the back wall, discreetly wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Officer Green cleared his throat loudly and turned his head, pretending to look at something on the far wall. Even Officer Torres, the hardened former K-9 handler who'd seen 100 reunions between dogs and handlers, felt his throat tighten. The warden stood off to the side, arms crossed, jaw set, but his eyes were soft. He'd been doing this job for 23 years. He'd overseen 19 executions, and every single time, He told himself the same thing. The system works. Justice is served. But today, the system had almost killed an innocent man. And the only thing that stopped it was a dog. By sunrise, everything changed. Emergency hearings were scheduled. Lawyers scrambled. Phones rang off the hook. The governor's office was flooded with calls. The microchip, the one hidden in Daniel's uniform, the one Titan had led them to, was analyzed within hours. It contained exactly what Daniel said it would. Body cam footage. Holloway's body cam footage. From a night of the warehouse raid. And it showed everything. Holloway approaching Daniel from behind, blade in hand. The stab. Daniel collapsing. Miguel rushing in, shouting, "What the hell did you do?" The struggle. The gunshot. Miguel falling. Holloway standing over both of them, breathing hard, face twisted in panic. And then Lieutenant Marsh's voice, off camera. "We can fix this. Plant the weapon. Make it look like Hayes did it." Holloway's response. "What about Miguel?" Marsh, cold and steady. "Collateral damage." The footage was damning. Irrefutable. Unforgivable. By noon, Lieutenant Marsh was arrested. He was in a meeting with the chief of police when federal agents walked in, cuffed him in front of everyone, and let him out in silence. 2 other officers involved in the conspiracy turned themselves in by 2 p.m. By 5 p.m., the district attorney's office issued a public statement. Daniel Hayes has been exonerated of all charges. A full investigation into corruption within the Metro Police Department is underway. We apologize to Mr. Hayes and his family for this profound miscarriage of justice. At 6:47 p.m., Daniel's restraints were removed. He stood in a small holding room just outside the death row corridor, rubbing his wrists where the cuffs had been. The warden stood across from him, holding a manila envelope. "Your personal effects," the warden said quietly, handing it over. "Everything you came in with 6 years ago." Daniel took the envelope but didn't open it. He just stared at it, like he couldn't quite believe it was real. "Mr. Hayes," the warden said, his voice softer now. "I don't know if this means anything coming from me, but I'm sorry." Daniel looked up. "You didn't do this." "No," the warden said, "but I was part of a system that almost killed you. And I'll carry that." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then carry it forward. Make sure it doesn't happen again." The warden extended his hand. Daniel shook it. Outside, Titan waited. The animal control officer had taken him to a small courtyard, where he lay in the grass, head on his paws, eyes fixed on the door. When Daniel stepped out, no longer in an orange jumpsuit, but in simple civilian clothes, Titan's head lifted. His ears perked. His tail started wagging. And then he bolted. He ran across the courtyard, full speed, and slammed into Daniel with so much force it nearly knocked him over. Daniel laughed for the first time in 6 years. He dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around Titan, letting the dog lick his face, his hands, his neck. "We're going home, boy," Daniel whispered. "We're finally going home." Later that night, as the sun set over the city, the warden stood alone in the now empty execution chamber. He looked at the wooden chair where Daniel had sat, the pale green tiles where Titan had alerted, the walls that had almost witnessed an irreversible injustice. And he said, quietly to no one, "Sometimes the only one who remembers the truth is the one who cannot speak." Titan didn't need words. He remembered. He protected. He proved that loyalty does not forget. Think back to where we started. A calm man sitting on a wooden chair in a pale green chamber, hands clasped, hours from execution. A tense German shepherd entering the room, body rigid, eyes sharp, alert, stance locked. For officers standing in a line, expecting a goodbye, what they witnessed instead was justice. Truth didn't arrive in a courtroom. It didn't come from lawyers or judges or forensic reports. It arrived on 4 paws, and it left hardened men in tears. If this story moved you, and I know it did, hit that like button right now. This is the kind of story that needs to be shared. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we bring you the most powerful, unbelievable true stories every single week. And comment below, what moment hit you the hardest? Was it Titan's alert? The confession? The reunion? Let me know. I read every single comment. Also, where are you watching from? Drop your country or city. Let's see how far this story has traveled. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. And remember, loyalty never forgets.